Please stand. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for all the gifts that you have bestowed on us, especially for those people who have made this day possible, energetic and committed students, generous parents and benefactors, all those who planned the logistics for today, and devoted faculty, staff, and administrators. Guide us with your wisdom and strengthen us in your service and the service of all your people. We ask this through Christ, our risen and ascended Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Please be seated. As Abbot of St. John's Abbey, on behalf of the sponsoring Benedictine community and as delegated by the Board of Trustees, I herewith call into session this commencement convocation at the conclusion of our 164th year of conferring academic degrees granted by the university. I request Dr. Eugene McAllister, Interim President of St. John's University, to take charge of these exercises.
Thank you, Abbot John. Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Eugene McAllister, President of St. John's, one of the great universities of America. We have waited a long time for this, and it is wonderful to be here together. And I want to extend a special welcome to our first-generation graduates and their families. We're honored to have walked with you. At a dinner with freshmen last year, a young man who'd been on campus only 4 or 5 weeks said, "I know what St. John's wants for me. You want me to be a good man." I looked around the room and saw heads nodding. It was a wonderful insight. We do want our students to be good men. That is the heart of the matter. That dinner, we all had some kind of vague notion that a good man was shorthand for someone of admirable qualities or characteristics. And of course, we all know a good man is hard to find. As you good men and women from our School of Theology go out into the world, I thought it might be worthwhile to identify a few qualities of a good man and woman, qualities that are badly needed in our time, our country, when there is so much division, anger, and misunderstanding. The first quality of a good man and woman is to listen, or as St. Benedict tells us, listen with the ear of the heart. Many images of the past year have been heartrending. George Floyd calling out for his mother, and a family gathered outside a nursing home window as their mother and grandmother passes, unable to touch her, hold her, or caress her. This past year, we needed good men, men who would offer empathy, compassion, justice, and it would help us believe things would get better. Those who suffer need reassurance. Someone understands. Someone will try to make the situation better. Someone will try to help them. That's what a good man and a good woman does. That's what I believe you will do. This past year, we've seen a lot of anger, harsh words, and accusations and division. The antidote to this is forgiveness. A good man forgives. We can change things around us by forgiving. We have also said and done stupid, hurtful, and idiotic things. I know I have, and I remember most of them. But I also know that the people I said them to or heard them have forgiven me. The French have a wonderful saying, to understand is to forgive. That brings listening and forgiveness together. Listening deeply is the beginning of understanding, and understanding is the beginning of forgiveness. An older alumnus, a man very successful in the business world, told me that one of the distinguishing features of St. John's is that a young man can make a mistake and not have it held against him. And in that light, and in the spirit of forgiveness, I'm very happy to inform all of you that any disputes, misunderstandings, things said and done in frustration are forgiven. What happens at St. John's stays at St. John's. All except parking violations. That can only be given with cold, hard cash. A third quality of a good man and a woman is to be grateful. The world is filled with people who seemingly have it all: beautiful homes and cars, exotic vacation, lots of money, and who are absolutely miserable. Our cable TV program is packed with people like that. I'm always so struck by stories of people with disabilities or harmed in accidents, or who suffer great loss, yet are optimistic, enthusiastic, or hopeful. At St. John's, we have our own inspiration and example of such a person, Professor Bob Bell, who has been confined to a wheelchair due to an accident as a young man. Bob is a teacher and guide, faculty resident, student counselor, author, working on his second book, and above all, president at our university. Bob is a man of faith and inspiration. We are grateful for Bob. Bob is a good man. A good man sees things for which to be grateful, and gratitude engenders hope, optimism, and forgiveness. A good man and a good woman identifies things for which to be grateful, and one way, a very powerful way to seek gratitude, express gratitude, is through prayer. That young man, the freshman, was exactly right. All St. John's wants is for our students to be good men and women. And now you seniors are gathered together, a powerful group of hundreds of young men and women. You are strong, well-educated, ethical, idealistic, and faithful. You are good men and women, and we need you. We are proud of you, and we love you. Thank you. I would like now to introduce Simeon Farquharson, who was chosen by his peers to give the student commencement address. Where is Simeon? There he comes. Simeon is an accounting and finance major from Nassau, Bahamas, who has used the time at St. John's to better himself, others, and our educational institutions. Over the past 3 years, Simeon has been an integral member of the St. John's Student Senate, where he served in varying capacities, most recently as the 2020 and 21 vice president. As a resident assistant for 2 years, Simeon played the important role of encouraging social, academic, spiritual, and personal growth in his peers. He served as captain and coach of the SJU volleyball team, and as a student mentor in international and intercultural student services. As a sophomore, Simeon received the St. John's University Caritas Man of Extraordinary Service Award. This award honors St. John's graduates who have demonstrated their dedication to serving others, both at St. John's and St. Benedict's and in the local community, showing a commitment to society through an active participation in students and social leadership. After graduation, Simi will be stationed in Guatemala with the St. John's Benedictine Corps, teaching English, helping others gain proficiency in the Spanish language. After his year abroad, as a volunteer, he plans to attend graduate school. Please join me in welcoming Simeon Farquharson.
Thank you. I am honored to be standing here today giving this commencement address on behalf of my fellow graduates, the class of 2021. Johnnies, I thank you. President McAllister, Abidjan, General Nakasone, administration, CSPSU faculty and staff, St. John's School of Theology graduates, parents, family and friends listening at home, remotely, and here in the wider audience. Today we are here to celebrate a magnificent group of graduating Johnnies. Taking into consideration last year's lack of graduation proceedings, we recognize that gathering in person for this commencement ceremony is an extraordinary blessing. To the graduates of 2020, I want you to know that you are in my heart. I stand here today for all of you, and of course, for my class, the class of 2021. Coming to America from the Bahamas as a first-generation college student was not easy. For a long time, college was simply a dream looming over my head, and a goal that seemed less and less attainable as my high school journey concluded. Thinking of the financial burden that I was taking on, the new academic environment that I had to adjust to, the change in weather that was frankly less than favorable, am I right? And simply being away from my family for such an extended period of time sometimes felt unbearable. I was unsure, at times intimidated, and anxious. I constantly asked myself, how am I going to stand out amongst so many bright stars? Then I realized I didn't have to do anything super special. I could simply be myself, and that was enough. I could do my ordinary extraordinarily. Some of you may have heard me use this phrase before, but if you haven't, let me use this speech to explain to you what I mean. First, to do your ordinary extraordinarily, I had to get right with myself. When I heard the news that I was voted as our class's commencement speaker, the negative thoughts rolled in faster than Ryan Miller could run in a 100-meter sprint. While I was dwelling on thoughts of self-doubt and fear of not doing it right, it hit me. A lesson I've learned here time and time again: I should not focus on the things that I cannot control. Instead, I must focus on who I am and capitalize on my strengths. I had to believe that greatness is within me and act on it, because faith without works is surely dead. This is what I mean by getting right with myself. Yes, this is something easier said than done, but graduates, try to take any negativity, self-hatred, self-doubt, anxiety, and bid it farewell, like the Tommies at our very last Johnny Tommy football game. Whoop, whoop. Why? Because we are conquerors. Each of you is a conqueror. Looking back at this last year of college should serve as evidence we stepped into uncharted territory and bossed up. We had to navigate 3-hour-long Zoom classes when, for me, it was hard to stay focused in the 50-minute ones. We had to plan daily how we were going to keep up with our classes that packed a week's worth of material into one day, on top of extracurriculars and sporting obligations. We were not only learning, but we were thriving, even in a pandemic. We are conquerors. As Johnnies, it's just what we do. Second, to find the extraordinary within me, I try to remind myself every day of my blessings, even in the face of my challenges. Challenges like those times when we got 80 and 90-page readings with reflections due the next day, like those times when we were faced with some sort of discrimination, like when we ran out of meal punches and flex dollars midway through the semester, like when our families could not be with us on family weekend when we really could have used the moral support, like those times when we got left by the link bus that served as a breaking point and triggered a mental breakdown. My little sister Sabria would often joke and tell me, Simeon, sometimes it's just okay not to be okay. And class of 2021, we definitely had times when we were not okay. In those moments, however, it is our blessings that help us overcome our challenges. Blessings like having beautiful family and friends that care so deeply for us. Blessings like our talents, our skills, our creativity, and independence of mind. Blessings like being comfortable, at peace, and present, even when there was so much going on around us. Blessings like the small things that others say, do, and contribute to our lives that make us go, thank you, I really needed that. Acknowledging my blessings is what keeps me humble, focused, and committed, especially when challenges try to make me lose perspective. We have all seen the good, the bad, and the ugly throughout our last 4 years together. However, in spite of it all, we are here celebrating today. What a blessing. Third, to do my ordinary extraordinarily, I had to remember that although I am small, I am a part of something bigger. Together, we are all small parts of a greater whole. As the load gets heavy and we look to each other for validation and support, we surge into an unstoppable force. Think back to the Sea of Red on Johnny Game Days. Think about how we united for the housing forum. Think about how they tried to take our cable away. Okay, maybe that's not the best example. But just think about how we hype each other up every day. St. John's has to be one of the only places that you would hear two people arguing about who is the better of the two, both advocating for the other person. As we do ordinary things extraordinarily, we empower each other to do the same. After all, we are and always will be the Johnny Sea of Red. For me, college was a completely foreign concept. I often felt as though I was in a movie. One titled, Bahamas Boy Takes on College in Polar Vortex. One that could be categorized as a drama, a comedy, a musical, and at times a horror film. College was so different from my upbringings in the Bahamas, but far exceeded what I expected. So, as the artistic director of my movie, it is my responsibility to wake up every day and make my movie 5-star worthy and 100% ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. I am responsible for doing my ordinary to the best of my ability. So, today at our college graduation, graduates, I tell you the same. Do your ordinary extraordinarily. Follow your passions and never follow someone else's path. Well, unless you're in the Arb and then you get lost, then to paraphrase Ellen DeGeneres, by all means, please follow that path. Step outside of your comfort zone. Don't seek comfort in the labels that others try to place on you. Live your life with integrity. Focus on your strengths. Focus on who and what you are. Because, Ravi, Brandon, you are strong. Because, Dre, Johnny, you are resilient. Because, Chris, Pete, you are courageous. Because, Jake, Andy, you are confident conquerors. And most of all, remember, class of 2021, just from the radiating smiles that I assume to be under the masks of our seated audience here today, you are loved. So again, do your ordinary extraordinarily. Put your 100% into whatever you do every time. Remember, your life is your movie. You determine where it goes. You are the main actor, you are the main director, and you are the camera person. I would like to thank my parents and family members for investing in me, instilling in me my values, and always having my best interests at heart. I would like to thank my past and present roommates, Rudy, Josh, Blake, Thomas, Joe, and Max. My advisor, Bob Bell, and Mike Conley, and Trish Dorn from being my A1 from day one. And most importantly, I would like to thank God for all the many blessings that He's bestowed upon me and for guiding my footsteps every day. Without the big man, I am nothing. Graduates, even though we are at the end of this movie, a new one is just beginning. My sequel is Bahamas Boy Takes on Guatemala. What is your sequel? Because remember, your extraordinary depends on you. Let's go! Thank you very much.
It is my great pleasure to introduce our commencement speaker today. We are truly honored that General Paul Nakasone made time in his demanding schedule to join us here. General Nakasone has been entrusted with one of the most important, pressure-packed positions in the world, a position that demands constant vigilance and attention to detail. And yet there is rarely a day that goes by when this Johnny from White Bear Lake, Minnesota, doesn't take a moment to think about St. John's and his roots. Paul graduated from St. John's and the ROTC program in 1986 with an economics degree and subsequently embarked on an illustrious United States Army career that has taken him to the very highest level of public service. As commander, U.S. Cyber Command and director, National Security Agency, General Nakasone directs civilian military personnel who provide critical cybersecurity functions for a grateful nation. His Benedictine humility prevents him from touting his own achievements, so it is perhaps his Johnny friends and classmates who summarize best the qualities that make Paul and his accomplishments so extraordinary. Said a fellow St. John's graduate, John Lyons, "You knew that he was special. He always had this resolve, this focus on mission." Classmate Mike Zumwinkle Paul's IQ raised the overall IQ quite a bit. He's always been ahead of the curve. Paul is also exceptionally proud of his own personal team, his wife Susan and children Sarah, Daniel, David, and Joseph, who as Team Nakasone have provided support and encouragement for each other at assignments around the world. General Nakasone tries to return to campus at least once a year to reconnect with his roots and for a reminder of how much this education, perspective, and friendships he fostered at St. John's have meant to him. Paul, I am going to read the citation on the Doctor of Laws that we are awarding to General Nakasone today. You've ascended to the highest echelon of the U.S. military, have been conferred with one of the most demanding vital jobs in the country. You've been entrusted with cybersecurity of our entire nation, a challenge of unprecedented difficulty during these changing times. And yet, when presented with these enormous responsibilities, you reacted with your typical humility and humanity, and with a renewed appreciation for the place your professional journey began. General Nakasone, you've done all that and so much more for your grateful country and for your loved ones, drawing on your strength of character and on the inspiration of St. John's. You've protected national security through 4 years of steadfast service at the national security agencies. These accomplishments are built on your legacy of service that includes staff officer on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Director of Intelligence in Afghanistan, and command and staff positions across all levels of the Army with assignments in the United States and the world. You have maintained and fostered your dedication to the alma mater, delivering the keynote address for the 20 and 21 Fighting Saints ROTC, and now delivering the commencement address today. Your dedication to Team Nakasone is even more profound. Throughout your military career, your devotion to family reflects your faith and embodiment of the Benedictine principles. In recognition of your wisdom, dedication, energy, and commitment to serving students in your country, St. John's recognizes you with gratitude and confers upon you General Paul Nakasone, the Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, on the 16th day of May, 2021.
Really appreciate it.
Dr. McAllister, thank you so much for that kind introduction and for this wonderful honor. I'd like to also recognize and thank Abbot John and the rest of the monks of St. John's Abbey, especially Father Don Talifus. I remember the order's profound influence on my own education, and I'm grateful for the chance to thank you in person. In fact, I still read Father Don's reflections online regularly. I know I speak for many alums when I say we're thankful for his continuing correspondence and dedication to St. John's. Thank you to President McAllister, the Board of Trustees, and other university leaders for inviting me to speak with you. I also want to extend my congratulations to incoming transitional president, Dr. James Mullen Jr., as St. John's and St. Ben's moves toward a new model of leadership. I do, however, join all Johnnies in thanking Dr. McAllister for his 2 years of service as interim president. We wish him well as he returns to his family in Montana. So when Dr. McAllister first invited me to speak to the graduating class of St. John's, I was thrilled. I immediately started picturing myself here at home, my home away from home, running into old friends and showing my family all of the places that meant so much to me during my 4 years in Collegeville. As much effort as I put into my studies, I tried to equal or exceed it in time spent eating and, of course, drinking at Sal's, Gary's, and Bo Diddley's, hanging out with friends at the SAG and cheering on the Johnnies against the Tommies. Eagerly anticipating my reunion with St. John's, I accepted President McAllister's offer and told him I look forward to seeing him soon. That conversation took place in the fall of 2019. It took an extra year, a year that has tested most of us in ways we never anticipated. We're all more deeply aware of how special it truly is to gather together in celebration, to share this moment with others. Let me say how impressed I am with your commitment to finding your way through the challenges of last year. As Simeon so eloquently put it, finding a way to do it together. In the pandemic's confusing early days, the St. John's community came together to ensure that students had assistance getting home and overcoming other challenges. And when the Student Senate administration found a way to preserve the social and educational ties of living and learning on campus for 2021, the same St. John's community found ways to help students return. You should feel proud of yourselves as individuals and members of that community. I'm proud to call Minnesota my home state. Even after living and deploying around the world, I still think of Minnesota, of St. John's, as the foundation that made everything else possible. When I was in high school and considering colleges, I often met graduates of other institutions who spoke fondly of their college days, of friends and football and classes. Good schools all. But when I spoke to graduates of St. John's, they always said something specific when I asked them the question, "Where'd you go to college?" The response was universal. "I'm a Johnny." It struck a chord with me. I'm a Johnny. Always present tense, never in the past, and said with pride, like it was still part of them years after graduation, like they never forgot what it meant to be a person who valued character above competition, service above self, and honor above ease. When I heard those words, I knew I wanted a chance to say them myself. And say them I have. Countless times over the course of my life and career, at every obstacle, in peace and in war, at every crossroad divided by a harder right and an easier wrong, I'm a Johnny. Because as we've seen so recently, you'll be asked to make hard choices. You'll be asked to go out into the world and use your talents and your energy to take on new challenges. And now you have the foundation to do just that. I speak from personal experience when I say that you may not even be able to imagine the challenges and missions that will come to define your lives. When I graduated in 1986, one of the roles I currently fill, Commander, U.S. Cyber Command, did not exist. Nor did the unit I lead, or even the appreciation how vast and demanding cyberspace would become. So even if you don't see a path for your current skills, your current talents, don't despair. What you learned here will not go to waste. The pandemic has tested us. But without a pandemic, I would tell you that we are in the midst of a transformative time, an inflection point both here and abroad. Today's greatest threats transcend boundaries, and some exist well outside what we might have once considered the traditional national security arena. COVID-19 is just one example of how our interconnected world can be turned upside down by a threat that has no regard for borders or walls. We face adversaries, old and new, who remain intent on disrupting international order, sowing doubt in democratic processes, and undermining the strength of long-held alliances and new partnerships. We contend with risks like the pandemic, climate change, violent extremism, and instability, which defy easy categorization or easy solutions. And we balance the great promise of technological changes, the kind of changes that could dramatically enhance our ability to meet threats like climate crises and disease, with the reality that the same advances in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and next-generation telecommunications could be used in ways that threaten our security and way of life. We cannot face these threats alone. We need to focus on a common cause, on building partnerships and understanding at every level of government, industry, academia, and internationally. All of which is to say, each one of you is needed. You have just earned an education built on the premise what you can and should do is good in the world. It's a call to action, one that's been passed down through Johnny history. From Senator Eugene McCarthy to Dan Wolgamott, one of the youngest members of the Minnesota legislature. From the earliest airmen trained on St. John's campus during World War II to astronaut Mark Vande Hei, who recently left Earth for another stint on the International Space Station. From Secretary Dennis McDonough, once again serving in government, this time as the head of Veterans Affairs, to Dan Kramer, the director of Fulbright U.S. student programs. This year in particular, we've seen incredible selfless service in those alumni giving on the front lines of this pandemic. The doctors, nurses, scientists, and administrators who have played key roles in getting care to those in need. Edwin Torres is one example. SJU class of 2016 and hard at work here in Minnesota as the COVID-19 vaccine outreach director. You never have to look far to find Johnnies in action. I have no doubt that you will quickly find yourselves among them. And just as an aside, should you find yourself considering taking on some of the wickedest intelligence and cybersecurity challenges of our day, well, let me tell you, U.S. Cyber Command and the National Security Agency is always looking for top talent. In all seriousness, you have some big choices ahead of you, choices that will determine the nature of your career, your family, and life. But the important thing today is that you now possess a foundation that will carry you through those decisions for the rest of your life. I want to speak a little bit about the value of this foundation you have both earned through your hard work and dedication and received through the hard work and dedication of others. We can see it in this stadium today, Clemens Stadium, the Natural Bowl, built in 1908 on the grounds of a drained cranberry bog. In my opinion, among the most beautiful venues in the world. But of course, not really natural. The monks carved away the clay here to use in school and monastery buildings, and then filled the arena with water for a cranberry bog. Hard work passed from one era to the next. This campus is filled with examples of each generation expanding on what came before. In another year, we would have gathered in the Abbey Church, sitting in those familiar pews, under the light of the stained glass windows. By the middle of the 20th century, St. John's was well established. The buildings that had once housed farming equipment and dairy herds, now homes of science and learning. Abbot Baldwin Dworshak, as the newly elected 6th abbot of St. John's, looked to build something new, something that would reflect Benedictine heritage while keeping its gaze firmly fixed on the present. A modern, forward-looking church. Marcel Breuer, originally from Hungary, then a young architect and designer in New York, took up the task. They worked together, architects, designers, engineers, monks, faculty, countless others, to bring that vision of the past and the future to life. Even today, we marvel at the result. The Bell Banner rising more than 100 feet high, the open space inside with unobstructed views no matter where you sit. And of course, the honeycomb stained glass windows, hundreds of hexagons engineered for strength and beauty, designed by Bronislaw Bach, an artist and member of the faculty, and painstakingly pieced together by staff, students, and local residents. If you look carefully, you can see the deep symbolism in the colors of the glass. The course of a year in greens, blues, reds, a pattern hidden in plain sight and preserved through strength and ingenuity. In the words of his colleagues, Breuer spent more time on the foundation of the church than anything else. He understood that if the foundation were strong enough, the church would overcome the trials of the years. If you look long enough, you'll see that pattern emerge in other parts of your life. It's easy to trace the Benedictine influence that shaped not just my relatively recent education at St. John's, but also the centuries of studies and learning that preceded it. The education you received here is a reflection of centuries of study and work, painstakingly handed down, molded and remolded, as we knew more, as we grew wiser. When St. Benedict wrote what would become the Rule of St. Benedict in the 6th century, he could hardly imagine
how far that rule would travel, or how influential it would become. A foundational text that would guide the daily lives of monks and nuns, to be sure, but also come to influence kings, scholars, explorers. This foundation, your education, your friends and classmates, the Benedictines, your St. John's community, it will stand by you. It has stood by me. At St. John's, I honed a great love of reading that has supported me throughout my life. It's my favorite question to ask. What are you reading? And my favorite piece of advice to give: read more. It's the surest way to stay in the mindset of a lifelong learner. You can never really read enough. With apologies to my former professors, I'm not sure I remember many of the facts from my time as a student. But what I do remember is the way I was taught to think. Take the wide variety of data, examine the assumptions on which it's based, test the validity of the evidence supporting those assumptions, and reach tenable and innovative conclusions. Critical, contemplative thinking. This truly has served me well. The Benedictine model of learning and serving, as passed down through generations, is both empowering and humbling. You see yourself in the context of a long and complex history, but you also see what can be done through hard work and an open mind. I know you're anxious to get to the celebratory part of the day, so I'll leave you with just a few parting thoughts, one Johnny to another. First, remember to thank all of the people who made today possible, your family and friends, of course, but also the school staff, faculty, administrators who worked so hard this past year. Whether preparing food or cleaning dormitories or teaching class, it's been a team effort, so be sure to recognize your teammates. Take a few minutes to look over the campus one last time. The Great Hall, the Reef, the SAG, Flint Town. When you come back in as alum, it'll never look quite the same. Familiar, yes, but different. As Marcel Breuer reminds us in his work on the Abbey Church, foundation is essential. You have a great foundation here. You know what it means to be a steward of your environment and your community. You know what it means to be part of a brotherhood. That will mean even more as you move through your career and your life. You know what it means to serve. Be brave enough to build something. It may seem like you're headed out into a stormy world. Start anyway. Build something that takes more than a day, a year, or even 10 years. Most of the things that are truly worth something in the world, strong relationships, a rewarding career, even meaningful hobbies, take time and effort. Read as much as you can, across all genres and ideas. Keep an open mind, listen to others, but keep enough time for solitude in your life that you know how to listen to yourself too. And when you succeed, or even when you stumble, remind yourself, I'm a Johnny. The world is beginning to open again. You're graduating just in time to be part of that moment. From one Johnny to another, congratulations and good luck.
Thank you. God bless you.
Will the candidates for degrees from the School of Theology please rise? President McAllister, I present the candidates for the degrees of Master of Divinity, Master of Arts, Master of Theological Studies, and Master of Theology, who have been approved by the faculty of the university.
By virtue of the authority committed to me, I confer upon you the degrees of Master of Divinity, Master of Arts, Master of Theological Studies, and Master of Theology, which have been approved by the faculty of the university and for which you have been recommended Father Dale Launderville, Dean of the School of Theology and Seminary, will ask the candidates to come forward.
The degree of Master of Divinity is conferred upon Daniel Hernandez Flores of the Order of the Holy Cross from La Cala, Mexico. The degree of Master of Divinity is conferred upon Caitlin Doyle Kruger from Duluth, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Divinity is conferred upon Megan Elizabeth Streeter from Apple Valley, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Divinity is conferred upon James Voller of the Franciscan Brothers of Peace of St. Paul, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Divinity is conferred upon Nancy Opstead Weldon from St. Joseph, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Arts in Liturgical Music is conferred upon Jacob Jordan Waite Burns of the Order of St. Benedict from Collegeville, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Arts in Ministry is conferred upon Kayla Judith Greiner from Ames, Iowa. The degree of Master of Arts in Ministry is conferred upon Jennifer Lynn Heyman from Malacca, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Arts in Theology with a concentration in spirituality is conferred upon Mark Wenzel Johannek from Maple Lake, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Arts in Liturgical Music is conferred upon Catherine Elizabeth Jonesa from Lake Elmo, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Arts in Ministry is conferred upon Catherine Ann Kelly from Maple Grove, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Arts in Liturgical Music is conferred upon Hwa Suk Oh from Seoul, South Korea. The degree of Master of Arts in Ministry is conferred upon Martina Talic from Mozar, Bosnia, and Herzegovina. The Master of Arts in Absentia is conferred upon Sister Karen Batsaba Artsy, Master of Arts in Theology of the Concentration in Music, or Monastic Studies, Vincent John Charles, Master of Arts in Ministry, and Brother Gregory Escardo, Master of Arts in Theology with a concentration in Monastic Studies, and Antoinette Marie Hudak, Master of Arts in Ministry, and finally Sister Marie-Therese Racine, Master of Arts in Theology with a concentration in Liturgy. The Master of Theological Studies with a focus in systematics is conferred upon Jason Scott Horstman from Wilmore, Kentucky. The degree of Master of Theological Studies with a focus in systematics is conferred upon Samuel John Ludlow Brobeck from Minneapolis, Minnesota. The degree of Master of Theological Studies with a focus in systematics is conferred upon Nguyen Phan Pom from Nguyen Ngoc Nam Ding, Vietnam. The degree of Master of Theological Studies with a focus in Monastic Studies is conferred upon Toan Phan Phan from Quy Liu Gai on Vietnam. And the degree of Master of Theological Studies with a focus in Liturgy is conferred upon Luke Michael van Overbeek from Albany, Minnesota. And the degree of Master of Theological Studies with a focus in Liturgy is conferred upon Quan Yao Wong from Hong Kong, Hong Kong. The Master of Theological Studies in Absentia is on Brother Tong Van Ho, Master of Theological Studies, focus in Scripture. The Master of Theology, this degree of Master of Theology is conferred upon Janice Francis Cristante from Jakarta, Indonesia. The degree of Master of Theology is conferred upon Timothy Ray Schmeling from Mankato, Minnesota. And the Master of Theology in Absentia, Brother Dung Van Thai, his Master of Theology. Please join me in a round of applause.
Will the candidates for the degree Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science please rise? President McAllister, I present the candidates for the degrees Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science who have been approved by the faculty of St. John's University and the College of St. Benedict.
By virtue of the authority committed to me, I confer upon you the degrees of Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science, which have been approved by the faculty of St. John's and the College of St. Benedict's, and for which you have been recommended. Dean of the Faculty, Pamela Bacon, will ask the candidates to come forward.
Graduates, you are welcome to shake Dr. McAllister's hand as you receive your diploma. If you feel comfortable shaking hands, please extend your right hand to let Dr. McAllister know. If you would prefer not to shake hands, that is welcome too. May I ask the audience to withhold applause until all candidates have received their degrees. Thanks. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts with Honors, egregia cum laude, Daniel Roger Bachmeyer. Mitchell Jeffrey Hansen. Robert Michael McManus. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts with Honors, summa cum laude, Dean Philip Amundsen. Christopher Robert Backus. Jack Allen Colleran. Ryan William Copeland. Jacob Christopher Check. Elliot Patrick Edeburn. Grant Lee Fuchs. Thomas John Gillich. Max Jacob Helgestad. Maxwell Dominic Hennon. Tyler Clark Johnson. Michael Joseph Klanowski. Preston Bowerly Copel. Brandon Daniel Kramer. Logan Stephen Larson. Ben Edward Lipinski. William Joseph Matuska. Joshua David Miller. Andrew Joseph Nowinski. Jacob James Sherber. Joseph Anthony Schwamm. Michael Fadi Suleiman. Nicholas Jacob Thompson. Ryan Dean Thompson. Jacob Michael Thorsten. Colin Thomas Yukanovich. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts with Honors, magna cum laude. Milo Jeffrey Onboard. Samuel Black. Michael Christopher Bloss. Pierce Anthony Boder Zarkowski. Randall Thomas Klintzman. Samuel Raymond Colella. Ethan Michael Decam. Jacob Anthony Drips. Colin Douglas Franz. Peter Francis Getke. Usama Suleiman Hassan. Brogan Joseph Hayden. Dongxiang Huang. Nathan Colin Georgry. Jaron Thomas Martin. Cade Allen McComber. Connor Thomas McCullichek. Ryan John Munter. Devin Michael Murphy. Andrew James Nielsen. Austin Thomas O'Keefe. Nicholas Stephen Pennick. Noah Solomon Lipnick. Jacob Daniel Redding. Jack Thomas Rogowski. Andrew Robert Rothstein. Jack Michael Gabrielli Scheck. Andrew James Schmelzer. Samuel Michael Young. Jordan Davis Zachman. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts with Honors, cum laude. Gavin Daniel Bates. Jean Gardy Boss. Will James Cooper. Jacob Peter Dittel. Maximilian Austin Ditzler. Troy Joseph Dobbs. Jared William Fike. Benjamin Ronald Jurdy. Elijah Stephen Greenblatt. Thomas Richard Hawkins. Mason Robert Hennon. Seth Richard Jackson. Jared Nathaniel Johnson. Ryan William Caro. Nathan Ryan Cobb. John Francis Krofchek. Andrew McDonald Cromer. Graydon Jonathan Kulik. John Thomas Mahold. Joshua Nathan Mikas. Patrick Judd Mullen. Dominic Charles Nussmeyer. Joseph Frank Peschel. Carter J. Sheely. Connor William Schoberg. Timothy Douglas Spacia. Gregory Ryan Andre Stubbs. Noah Daniel Webb. Seamus Robert Westerman. Andrew Robert Wingard. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Science with honors. Egregia cum laude. Brandon Richard Dahl. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Science with honors, summa cum laude. Noah David Kirsten. Anthony Hernandez Weber. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Science with honors, magna cum laude. Tanner Joseph Dufault. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Science with honors, cum laude. Thomas William G. Hoover. Alexander Michael Lucan. Candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Arts, Marco Antonio Aguilera. Jess Daniel Allers. Najib Mustafa Ahmed. Luke Velez Allen. Ravi Maurice Alston, Jr. Peter James Anderson. Anton Berntel Andrews. Ashton Elridge Andrews. Elias Philip Andrewjack. Jackson David Baird. Holden J. Baker. Oakley James Baker. Brennan Michael Baldwin. Christian Joseph Balco. Brett Thomas Barrett. Nathan John Barrett. Keegan Joseph Bartow. McKinley James Bassett. Daniel Howard Baumert. Grant Michael Becker. Robert Joseph Benson. James Madison Berg. McLean Frederick Berglove. DeAndre Tariq Evan Bethel. Jack Christopher Butz. Justin Patrick Beeran. Ernesto Che Blanchard. Alec Scott Bodeigheimer. Justin Thomas Brockub. Andrew Robert Bryan. Alex Todd Broadwell. Travis James Brown. Anthony Joseph Buckingham. Marlon Craig Burke. Joseph Edward Burrell. Christian Daniel Canavati. Caleb Thomas Carlson. Edward Michael Cavello III. Samuel Richard Chalmers. Rayvon Alexander Chambers. Luke Alex Chapdelaine. Cortland Richard Chitwood. Nicholas Richard Christian. Kristan D'Angelo Clark. Benjamin Mancina Clay. Jason Ronald Comstock. Christopher Paul Condon. Brendan Patrick Conway. Anthony Cooper. Jacob Michael Cussert. John Michael Cronin. David Ross Cullen. Aiden James Davis. Carson Michael Deal. Jacob Allen Debus. Brandon James Deck. Tyler Richard DeFore. Benjamin Daniel DeMars. Joseph Anthony DeMello. Jack Roger Dieters. Nicholas Dean DeVasia. Hudson Drontel Distel. Gregory Thomas Drayton. Nathan Neal Dries. Dylan Donald Dubuque. Shane Ricori Dunkley. Adam Vernon Duran. Cole Lawrence Dutko. Parker Ryan Dutko. John Robert Edmond. Tyler Reuben Erkey. Elliot Richard Ice. Nathan William Erickson. Maximilian X. Erickson. Charles Eno Etuko. Ryan Keenan Shaughnessy Farley. Simeon Joshua Farquharson. Isaiah Keone Fau. Martine Noah Figueroa. Adrian Connell Flournoy. Simon David Fruth. Maxwell Eric Fox. Dylan Jeffrey File. James Thomas Gaffey. Ryan Joseph Gallagher. Nicholas Michael Gannon. Juyuan Gao. John Patrick Gibson. Joshua Scott Gilliam. Gavin Robert Gilman. Blake Taylor Gilmore. Blake Michael Golden. Ryan Robert Graham. Bradley Eugene Grimm. Henry Thor Hagen. Charles Thomas Hake. Ryan Michael Hall. Lao Su Heng. Zachary Robert Hansen. Ray Heron. Miles Daniel Harrington. Christopher O. Harris. Abdimalik Warsam Hashi. William Thomas Hawkins. Alexander James Hyder. Alexander James Hyder. Zachary Michael Heinen. Elijah Martin Henderson. Grant Stephen Henkels. Eric Christopher Hennigs. Alan Huchem Herr. Andrew Joseph Heroux. Benjamin George Hester. Joseph Frank Himsel. Noah Dean Hoberg. Royce Allen Hooper. Blake Samuel Hessian. Michael Joseph Hoppy. Thomas John Hornick. Ryan James Hausman. Alexander Huerta. Clive Hume. Brandon Ty Hunt. Patrick Martin Janning. Tyler James Jensen. Abdikaf Nor Jabrel. Jonathan Trey Johnson. Kylan Wyden Johnson. Richard Parker Johnson. Tanner Wade Johnson. Xavier Antonio Joseph Smith. Zachary Connor Wan. Vincent Richard Callhammer. Bryce Travis Kapsner. Robert John Carlson. Eric James Keyser. Brady Matthew Klapaki. Cole Joseph Klapaki. Theodore Allen Knudsen. Austin Richard Kester. Kyle Roy Kernovich. John Thomas Krapatis. Nicholas John Creighton. Colin Ross Kummer. Jake Allen Katina. Maxwell Nicole Labine. John Sullivan Laird. Paul Marvin Langen. Justin Ronald Langer. Adam Joseph Lara. Joseph G. Larson. Hui Duck Lei. Ka Ying Bruce Lee. Moa Lee. Na Steve Lee. Brandon Jeha Lee Gilligan. Noah Gregory Lafave. Gabriel Enrique Leon Garcia. Jesus Leon Morales. Adam Clarence Lipinski. Aaron Ralph Listman. Logan Ryan Linvet. Jonathan Linus Lepetsky. Dominic Lopez. Peter Matthew Magtibai. Jack Bradley Matea. Jacob Gordon McCabe. Nolan William McLouth. Joseph David Meyer. Ryan Kenneth Miller. Andrew Stephen Moe. Steve Morales. George William Jack Morrison II. Joseph Bradley Munstertiger. Gabriel Murgo Garcia. Zachary Charles Nagel. Cole Michael Najarian. Tevin James Nygaard. Levi Dean Neuenschwander. Nicholas David Newman. Michael John Doyle Olson. Lucas James Otti. Hani Pan. Lucas Joseph Panvica. Nicholas Anthony Peranto. Joseph Raymond Parise. Blake Paul Patrick. Bryson Chase Pena. Cole Patrick Funenstein. Jack Raymond Pieper. Michael Anthony Pineda. Timothy Andrew Plessel. Nolan Paul Procott. Guangao Chi. Brandon James Radent. William Jacob Reibel. DeMarco Dayton Randall. Kyle William Ray. Mark Kevin Redman. Stephen Thomas Renzi. Carlos Roberto Rivas Jr. Tyrese Lacito Robinson. Tucker Nicholas Rockus. Samuel Joseph Rarrett. Sergio Jamie Roman. Matthew Jeffrey Rotter. David Earl Jelani Russell. Thomas Randall Russett. Tristan Alexander Sabina. Jordan Ryan Sales. Abraham Sanchez Garcia. Mackenzie Frank Schlutner. Nicholas Richard Schmidt. Griffin Riley Scholl. Mitchell Stephen Schroeder. Austin James Schrepfer. Jack Raymond Schwartz. Levi Michael Schwieters. Cameron James Seneca. Sante Love Sanu. Gabriel Michael Severson. Perry Marcian Seymour Jr. Tsu Chong Shen. Ori Shima. Thomas Paul Skindingsrud. Kyle Joshua Smith. Reed Timmer Smith. Thomas James Smith. Austin David Solers. William Henry Sontag. Cole T. Soto. Brendan Douglas Splinter. Matthew James Stacken. Christopher Brendan Stanek. Bailey John Stedman. Eric Victor Stein. Hayden Wade Stensgaard. Eston Dean Stensrud. Jalen Keyshawn Stephen. Buck Robert Strain. Charles Stephen Stuck. Kyle Jonathan Suick. Connor Joseph Swart. Zachary Isaac Swedberg. Tanner Ray Talbot. Lucas Andrew Thompson. Samuel John Tibbetts. Briar Kenyon Topo. Thomas John Torbert. Benjamin Michael Unger. Thomas James Velez. Lou Jason Vang. Natawa Vang. Juhu Tyler Vang. Calvin Vo. Derek Joseph Vondero. Cole Berkeley Vosper. Fu Xing Vu. Paul Oliver Wadsworth. Thomas Joseph Wadkey. Eli A. Walter. Charles Arthur Waters. Logan Joseph Weiss. Charles John Wenker. Colton Edward Whaley. Alexander David Wiechek. Maxwell Daniel Wiechek. Kenneth David Williamson. Rudolph Benjamin Wilson, Jr. Jace William Windsor. Mitchell George Wolfe. Gavin Patrick Wallenberg. Benjamin Shang. Pengxing Shang. Ku Yang. Kyle Thomas Yetzer. Jiachen Jia. Alec K. Zimmer. Tianyu Tsu. Luke Kenneth Zwaber. Please join me in a round of applause for our graduates.
And now, graduating members of the men's chorus, the chamber choir, and two 2020 alums will sing the alma mater, and I have had singing in arrangements by Dr. Axel Timer.
hop in here?
Thank you, Dr. Thymer. Dr. Thymer has just completed his 52nd year at St. John's and will be retiring. Thank you all who provided music for today's ceremony. This time I would like to recognize and thank the faculty and staff of St. John's University and the College of St. Benedict for their dedication and generosity. I'd like to offer special thanks to the extraordinary efforts to get us into Clements Stadium today. Our provost, Richard Ice, Tanya Gertz, Russ Klein, Nikki Malaka, Jeff Wobbles, Nancy Dooland, Mary Jo Wagner, Tonya Hogan from my office, and Patty Epsky. And I also want to offer a special thank you to those who prayed that it not rain today. You've got some clout. Abbot John, will you please give us the final blessing?
Please stand. And please remove your hats, please. Let us pray. And I'd ask parents and relatives and friends, faculty and others, honored guests, if you're comfortable, please extend your hand in blessing with me. This is a three-part blessing, so give me a strong amen to each part, okay? Got it? May the Holy Spirit, the Consoler, bless you in every way and strengthen you for the journey ahead. Amen. May you always walk in God's ways, knowing what is right and good, and having the grace and the courage to carry it out. Amen. May God enrich you with the gifts of faith, hope, and love, so that what you do in this life brings you to the happiness of everlasting life. And may Almighty God bless you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. May I ask every one of you, if you would please sit down and remain in your seats until the graduates have recessed out of the stadium. So graduates, please stay put until you leave. Your usher is asking you to leave. Guests, please meet your graduates on Abbey Road. How fitting, huh? Thank you all.